I didn't know I had a sister.
Well, you do. She was away at school.
My brother walked up to me.
Hi, my name is Tyler. What's yours?
My name is Cassidy.
That's a very pretty name. Thank you for the gift.
He threw his arms around my waist and I hugged him back as I struggled to hold back my tears. Hi there, my name is Cassidy. Before I continue my crazy story, give us a thumbs up and smash that notification bell so you will get updates when we post other crazy stories like mine. For many years, my parents tried having children but were unsuccessful. They depleted their nest egg by visiting a variety of doctors, doing numerous tests and doing multiple fertility implants. When they finally got the great news that mom was pregnant, they were so excited. They both wanted a boy, and when the ultrasound indicated that wish might come true, my parents took great care to make sure mom and the baby were safe. On the day that my mother was rushed to the delivery room, my parents were so excited. Until I was born. Yep, you guessed it. I wasn't a boy, and their disappointment in me was never hidden and continued throughout my entire life. Mom, look at this! A 5-year-old me ran towards the kitchen one afternoon from preschool.
What is it?
Mom asked dryly. I took the medals from around my neck and handed it to her. Today was the last day of preschool for me, and I got quite a few awards. I was so happy and excited to go home and tell my parents.
What are these?
Miss calls them my medals of achievement. Aren't they pretty? My eyes widened and twinkled as I focused on them. I looked on in horror as Mom took my medals over to the trash and dumped them.
Those medals aren't going to get you anywhere. Now go upstairs, have a bath, and come back and help me with dinner.
As time went on, my parents constantly mistreated me. I never got new clothes, went anywhere with them, or even had any pictures. When I was 10, Mom got pregnant. But this time, they didn't want to know the sex of the baby until it was born. I became Mom's gopher, and during her last trimester, I stayed at home to help her. She told the school that she would homeschool me, but she never did. Finally, Mom delivered a healthy baby boy. When she arrived home, I ran to the door to greet her and my baby brother.
Get away from him, you filthy child!
Mom screamed as I tried to get a look at the baby. Early next morning, Dad packed up my clothes and dropped me off at Stanford Academy. I sat outside while he spoke to an elderly woman in the office. When he left, he didn't even look back. No goodbyes, no hugs, no kisses. The elderly woman walked out of the office.
Good morning, Cassidy. My name is Dr. Leopold. I am the director of this school. At this school, we train you to become the wives of very rich and very successful men. Once you reach 18, you will be married.
Married? My voice cracked.
Yes, dear. You're going to make some wealthy man very happy one day. As long as you do everything we tell you to do, you will be okay.
I shared a room with 6 other girls, some older and some younger. I was given a uniform. The only thing I wore other than that was a nightgown to sleep in. My days were filled with classes that taught us that we were to be obedient to our husbands at all times, and as a wife, it was our duty to serve and take care of them. We had so many household chores to do that by the end of the day, my knuckles were bruised. As far as academics, we were taught how to read and write. That was it. No math, no history, no nothing. I eventually made a few friends, but my best friend was Martha. She was at the school a year before I arrived. She showed me the ins and outs of maneuvering throughout the Stanford school system. Every day, I wrote a letter to my parents and sent it to Dr. Leopold for her to mail it. But my parents never wrote back. And after the first year, I just stopped writing. Over the years, I saw my friends line up and be chosen by men who looked over 50. Once chosen, she was taken to the office with her intended and Dr. Leopold for a few minutes before she was left with him. About a month after my 18th birthday, Dr. Leopold called me to her office. Upon entering, I saw an older couple sitting opposite Dr. Leopold. "Good day, ma'am. You wanted to see me?" Dr. Leopold nodded at the parents, who stood up and thoroughly inspected me as though I were cattle. It was the most humiliating day of my life.
We'll purchase her.
I just stood there as they made their transactions. After about 30 minutes, I left with my future in-laws. As I looked back at the school, I knew I would never see those girls again. We boarded a plane and left the country. I was woken up a few hours later and immediately prepared for my wedding. I wore a fancy wedding dress and veil. I didn't know any of the bridesmaids or flower girls. As I walked down the aisle with my father-in-law, my chest tightened. Not one friend or family member of mine was seated in the congregation. This was not how I imagined my wedding day to be. I paused for a moment and my arm was tugged slightly to keep moving, which I did. I reached the altar and my hand was placed into that of the groom. I looked at him shyly from behind my veil. He looked a few years older than me with kind eyes and a sweet smile. During the ceremony, I stood there and thought about how drastically my life was going to change. I was jolted back to the present when the pastor said,
Now you may kiss the bride.
My heart galloped as Ross, my husband, lifted the veil. He pressed his lips lightly against mine before pulling away slowly. I blushed. Once the ceremony was over, we took dozens of pictures before we headed to the reception. As we pulled up to the mansion, my jaw dropped. It was immaculate. The pillars, the colors, the yard.
This is my parents' home. They insisted we have the reception here.
We were escorted to the grand ballroom where our guests were waiting. After the formalities of the reception, Ross looked at me.
I would like to show you something.
I allowed him to take my hand and he guided me to the backyard. It was full of fountains and different types of flowers on hedges. We walked through a hedged maze until we got to a bench where we sat.
How do you like it?
Ross placed my arm at the back of the bench, but he didn't touch me. This place is amazing. It seems surreal.
So, tell me about yourself.
I went on to tell Ross about my childhood and what my parents did to me and the 8 years I spent at the Stanford Academy.
My parents paid for you? They told me they had a friend who had a daughter and they wanted us to blend families. I agreed because I trusted my parents' judgment. I'm so sorry they did that to you. I am also sorry your parents treated you so horribly.
My trials led me to you, so it was worth it. He kissed me again and we chatted for a few minutes before heading back to the reception. Over the next few months, Ross took care of me in a way that made me realize that everything I learned about being a wife was wrong. It was hard to unlearn some things, and I'm still unlearning, but Ross is guiding me along. He even suggested that we purchase a home close to my hometown and visit my parents. I was against it at first, but Ross and I came up with a plan and I agreed. When we arrived at my parents' house after 9 years of not seeing them, I was nervous. I squeezed the straps of the bag I was holding. Ross knocked on the door.
You'll be fine.
Ross squeezed my hands and smiled. Dad opened the door and the uneasiness on his face was evident.
Hi.
Hi, Dad. This is my husband, Ross. Can we come in? Ross extended his hand to Dad, who shook it. Hesitantly, Dad looked at Ross.
Sure, come in. Honey,
Dad yelled.
we have guests.
A little boy came running into the room with an airplane in his hands. Hi, I smiled at him.
Hi, who are you?
I looked across at Dad, who nodded at me to go ahead. I'm your Mom walked in just then, and I jumped up from my seat and Ross stood next to me. Hi, Mom. I pushed Ross in front of me. This is my husband, Ross. He extended his hand, but Mom ignored it and turned to Dad.
What is she doing here?
Ross intervened as he took the bag from me.
We bought some gifts for you.
Ross handed out the gifts as my parents and my brother opened their gifts. We purchased a diamond set for my mom, necklace, bracelet, and earrings. For Dad, we purchased a Bowmore 1957 Scotch whiskey and a Rolex. For my brother, we purchased a remote control helicopter.
Go and tell your sister thank you.
Mom nudged my brother towards me.
I didn't know I had a sister.
Well, you do. She was away at school.
My brother walked up to me.
Hi, my name is Tyler. What's yours?
My name is Cassidy.
That's a very pretty name. Thank you for the gift.
He threw his arms around my waist and I hugged him back as I struggled to hold back my tears. Honestly, the day went better than I expected. I helped Mom make dinner while Ross, Dad, and Tyler were outside flying the helicopter. As we headed to the door to leave, Mom hugged Ross and me.
It was so nice having you here. If you're free next Saturday, maybe we can go out to dinner.
Ross and I agreed. We thanked them for the day and left.
You see, I told you everything would have been okay.
Ross held my hand as we walked towards the car. The next 6 months were amazing. I not only rebuilt my relationship with my parents, but I was able to build a relationship with my brother. I purchased gifts for my parents and Tyler every time I met with them. One afternoon, while sitting in the car in my parents' driveway, Ross turned to me.
Do you think now is a good time to speak with your parents about the business proposal?
I think now is the perfect time. I'm sure they'll be willing to take the leap. Our weekly dinner date with my family was great. After dinner, when Tyler went to watch television and the adults were still sitting around the dining room table, Ross popped the question to my parents.
Can I run a business proposal by you? I think it would be something that would be of interest to you. Sure, Ross. Go ahead.
Dad nodded.
Well, some business associates and I are looking for people who are interested in working overseas. You get $250,000 up front, and you'll be overseeing staff and events, but it has the potential to be $1 million profit.
Ross went on further to discuss what will be expected of them, how soon they'll need to be on site, pay, as well as days off and everything else business-wise.
My lawyer's already looked it over. I can leave you a copy if you want to read it over. We only have a few spaces left.
Oh, well, if your lawyer already looked it over, then I'm sure it's fine.
Okay, great. Let me get it from the car.
Ross ran to the car to get it while Dad and Mom chatted excitedly. Ross returned a few minutes later with the documents and a pen. My parents didn't even read the documents, they just signed where Ross told them to sign. He told them that they would be hearing from the other stakeholders in a few days to finalize the next part of the proposal. A few minutes later, Ross and I left, excited for what would happen in the near future. A few days later, after Ross and I had dinner with my parents, Ross took Tyler for ice cream. My parents and I were watching television when the doorbell rang. A few minutes later, after they left, there was a knock on the door. Mom went to open it and I followed close behind. Mom opened the door.
Good evening. May I help you?
There stood 3 men in suits. One replied,
Good evening. We are here for Mr. and Mrs. Moore.
I'm Mrs. Moore. What is this about?
It's about the contract that you signed.
Oh, right. You must be the other stakeholders that Ross told us about. Do come in.
The 3 men stepped onto the living room and the man asked,
Are you and Mr. Moore ready to leave? Sheikh Rashid and Sheikh Salama will be leaving on a trip in 2 weeks. They require all their staff to be on board and trained before they leave.
Another man stepped forward.
We need to leave now so you can catch a plane to Saudi Arabia so you can meet your new employer. What are you talking about?
Dad looked confused. The man pulled out documents from his briefcase and showed them to my parents.
Are these your signatures?
After inspecting them, they agreed that it was. The man explained that they were now the property of Sheikh Rashid. The 2 other men grabbed Mom and Dad and dragged them outside.
You can't do this to us.
It's a legally binding contract, ma'am, and if we get you them on time, we will be paid $5 billion.
That they will. I finally broke my silence and my parents looked at me. You'll get the same love and affection that you've shown me the first 18 years of my life. That's how long your contract is for. I turned to the man with the briefcase. Let me know as soon as you make the drop-off. The man nodded and hopped into the driver's seat of the van while my parents were pushed into the back. When Ross and Tyler returned, I told Tyler that these stakeholders came and Mom and Dad just left. I told Tyler that he will live with me until Mom and Dad returned. When Tyler ran to his room to pack his bags, Ross pulled me close.
See, babe, I told you everything would work out.
I nodded, though I still felt a twinge of sadness in that moment. Why couldn't my parents have loved me for me?